What's the one thing you regret doing for your wedding day?
Not exactly a regret, but just a reminder to keep things in perspective. Looking at my grandmother's wedding photos, she pointed out her bridesmaids wearing matching hats. She remembered these hats were important and there was some big to do about them. For the life of her, she couldn't remember what exactly, and you certainly couldn't tell from the pictures. Just remember that when you're having heated debates over the correct shade of blue for the napkins. When we got married, I decided to let my bridesmaids wear whatever they wanted. My mom tried talking me into getting them matching dresses, saying the photos would look messy if they wore different things. I'm so glad I ignored her. Our photos look colorful, my friends looked amazing, and I saved a ton of money. My rule for our wedding was, no one knows what it was supposed to look like. I kept things really simple and straightforward. No big centerpiece flower arrangements, just a rough cut slice of wood, from the local tree feller, with 3 painted wine bottles and a few flowers. Kids were allowed, and I bought a little cheap coloring book and crayons to keep them entertained. No big ballgown dress, just a simple white dress from a local retailer. Same with shoes, just a cheap pair. No fancy car, just my dad's car with ribbons on it. You know what? We all had a fantastic time. We have some lovely memories of the day. We didn't break the bank nor have a nervous breakdown over minute details. Seems like most people's regret can be drilled down into doing what their parents wanted them to do. Reading this thread is making me really glad we didn't have a true wedding. My husband and I always wanted to do courthouse, and apparently I never made that clear to my parents. My in-laws were cool with this, and we told them we would wait till they visited in May, but COVID ruined that and they told us not to wait on them. My dad, though, spent 5 months trying to convince me that my husband had to ask his permission, said he wouldn't accept it otherwise. Begged us to get married in a church, when we are both agnostic and my dad doesn't even attend mass anyways. Just wanted that cause it's what my cousins did. And then begged and pleaded we have a reception so he could have a party like all of my cousins did. I hate attention, weddings, parties, all of it. I don't even like drinking outside of my own home. We got married right after lockdown lifted in our state, but I told my parents not to come because our county was still bad and my dad was pissed, said he would show up anyways. But he never did, thank fuck. It was just us and my friend who took our photos. Perfect in my eyes. Letting my ex-Mill dictate pretty much everything. It stopped being our wedding and became her wedding. And she is crazy. The whole wedding was no longer focused on my wife and I but my Mill handing my wife off to me. Which is really ironic because after that moment Mill became even more controlling. Some things she did. She had a mommy-daughter dance. Made an 30-minute long speech about raising my wife, including playing several inappropriate baby videos. Made a toast to herself, cut the cake with my wife, tossed the bouquet herself, tried to outcast my small family, party of 6, to the corner, departed the wedding in our limo with us. This is the weirdest one. The bridal lingerie literally said, "Mommy's girl." The wedding was ruined for me. The worst part? It set a precedent that my Mill can do whatever she wanted in our relationship and my wife would always choose her side. This eventually caused a split after Mill spanked the hell out of my daughter and my wife took her side. I should have made my wife eat her meal. We sat at the table alone and chatted while everyone else was eating and she said she wasn't very hungry after eating like 1/4 of her plate. Turns out that half hour was the only 30 minutes of the day she wasn't hungry. I finally went downstairs and got her a plate of hors d'oeuvres after her trying to politely sneak down for 2 hours. They spirited her food away some point after dinner and she still regrets not getting to eat the great food we picked out. This is the one I was looking for. Not getting to eat anything. In addition to not getting a chance to eat at our actual wedding, the catering staff made a doggy bag of food for us to take back to the hotel, which turned out to be just a bunch of dips like hummus and such, but with no crackers or forks or anything. We ate it with our fingers anyway because we were so damn hungry. I wish we had insisted on saving one full portion of the food at least, so we could even get to try it. Getting separated from my wife while at the wedding. She went to the bathroom and then got swarmed by friends and family and she disappeared what seemed like hours. Also, in general, getting pulled away from each other. When I would get a drink or talk to someone. The reason I regret it is because my wife looked so absolutely stunning that day and I just wanted to look at her the entire time. My wife is still hot, but something about that dress. Getting a shitty photographer my mom recommended, someone from her church. As we're taking pre-wedding pictures, part of the wedding picture package, I asked him during one of the breaks what got him into photography. He answered, "It's just something to do while I try to open my restaurant." That should have been the red flag. Oh my god, same, except it was my mother-in-law's suggestion and the photographer was female. She hadn't done any weddings before and the ways she screwed up were legion. Family photos before ceremony? My dad and brother weren't in the photos. Family photos after the ceremony? My uncle's head is hidden behind someone else in every photo. She made a big deal about us cutting the cake but forgot to photograph us cutting the cake. She made us a book of photos from the wedding filled with photos of random people we didn't know and quotes about love with poor grammar and missing punctuation marks. Not eloping and leaving my mother-in-law in the dark. I could have had hair and makeup done. Could have had the dress of my dreams. And may even have pictures on my walls from a day I loved. I really appreciate you posting this here. Too often when weddings are discussed on Reddit, it quickly becomes a competition of who can out-cheat the other. Well, we spent $15 and got married at IHOP, oh yeah. Well, we spent $4 and got married in a Dollar Tree parking lot. It is eye-roll inducing, and I say that as someone who has entertained the idea of eloping myself. For those that had a cheap courthouse deal that are happy with it, great. That is awesome. But it usually turns into sanctimonious people patting themselves on the back for not having a wedding. Some people have more than enough financially to have a more formal wedding without it being a bad decision, and that's okay too. It is a big event and it's not weird to want something special for it. It's a lot more than material things, as you mention. Those beautiful professional photos where you look the most beautiful you've ever looked in your life mean a lot. Being surrounded by every person you've ever loved in your life means a lot. Dancing and celebrating the person you care for most means a lot. Not eloping. Our wedding was relatively small and inexpensive, less than $10K, less than 60 guests, but we could have spent that money on a sweet beach elopement and doubled up our honeymoon to be 2 weeks. Same. We wanted to elope but settled on just grandparents and parents to make them happy. My husband's parents especially, since he's an only child. We did not hear the end of it from distant family. Even an uncle I hadn't seen in years. Also, my parents complained that none of their family got invited. Even thought they knew that was the deal. My in-laws were the only people that were grateful and supportive and understood what we were giving up. I wanted a small event for about 20 people. My fiancée agreed, but then her mom insisted they have a lot of very close and important family members, they just have to invite. So we agreed on a bigger wedding, but parents supposed to pay. We searched for a wedding venue and estimated a cost for 90 guests, less than 30 were from my side of the family, but everyone was happy about it, including me at this point. They all agreed for the costs except my mom, who was widowed for 10 years at this point and couldn't afford it. So I offered I'll cover her part myself. I was working abroad and sending most of my money to my future wife and let her organize everything and trusted with whatever she was doing with that money. A few months before the wedding was due and I came back to my country, I discovered my money covered the whole wedding. Her parents ghosted the subject. That marriage didn't hold up. I calculated how much money I've put into the wedding just because of my ex-mother-in-law's delusional thinking, and I'm still goddamn mad at this waste of money. Also, only 20 members of my family showed up against 60 of hers that totally had to be invited, and the ratio of money in the envelopes from both sides was still 50-50. I'm even more mad. If I would change one thing though, it would have been to hire a hair and makeup artist. My mill did my hair and it was fine, and I did my own makeup and it was fine, but I wish I had just let myself spend that little bit extra on myself looking back. Even though we did get caught in the rain, so it all would have been ruined the same either way, haha. Made for a fabulous waterfall photo though. Stuffing cake in my wife's face. No exaggeration, I regret it to this day. One of the traits of a successful marriage is to protect your spouse, with words, with your actions. Protect in this case has the meaning of upholding their dignity, their honor, etc. Shoving cake in their face is not doing any of that, and it's very, very public. Don't do it. Plus it messed with her makeup. I really wish I hadn't. I went to a friend's wedding and she had a beautiful bright orange fondant covered cake. They had discussed the cake smash thing beforehand, and decided not to do it. His brothers goaded him into it. The dye in the fondant stained her face, and also got all over her dress. She spent an hour in the bathroom crying while we all ran around trying to find a Tide pen or something to help her fix her dress, and rummaged through our bags for makeup to fix her up. I felt so bad for her. Side note, they were also the kind of couple that did no more than closed-mouth kissing before their wedding, but about a week later it came to light the groom had gone camping with the guys, and screwed some random girl while drinking. Then that revelation exposed the mom, who had been having a 30-year-long affair with her husband's best friend, and one of the adult kids turned out to be the best friends. It was a wild ride to sit back and watch. I would move speeches to before dinner is served. People are quicker when they're hungry and not drunk yet. I personally wouldn't bother with the first dance. We're not dancers. It was really fucking awkward. The one thing I would recommend to everyone is having party bombs, like mini indoor firework, and inside there's silly stuff to play with. We had groups of people from different places who didn't know each other. It was a brilliant icebreaker and so much fun. My wife and I don't dance. At least the fancy kind. We picked our wedding song to dance to, and that was the end of that thought process. The day of, they call us out for the dance, and a lot of people were expecting something. Maybe a nice and boring box step. Maybe one of those crazy choreographed numbers you see on YouTube. Nope. What they got was two lovebirds laughing their asses off while faking dance moves all over the dance floor. It may have been the only time I truly spent alone with my wife at the ceremony. Just two numbskulls swinging each other around cackling like madmen. There are two moments from that wedding that I'll never forget. My beautiful wife-to-be walking down the aisle, and the smile she gave me when she realized we were about to put on a good show. Well, not the wedding day precisely, but the next day. A. Fuck Carnival Cruises, and B. What idiot books their honeymoon travel requiring them to get up at 6 a.m. the day after the wedding? Oh wait, us. We're the idiots. Other than that, my wife is a phenomenal planner, so our only real regret day of and after was relying on other people for key points of transportation. My best man was an hour late picking me up. Unclench. I planned on being there hours early to help the vendors set up, so I wasn't anywhere close to late for the wedding. Then my parents were late getting us to the airport for our honeymoon flight, and we almost missed at the flight and B. the bus to the cruise line because of delays. Shout out to the limo driver with the 1920s rolls who was driving my wife and the bridesmaids, Mill, before the wedding, and the two of us after, though he and the car were top-notch. Things we did not regret: not overspending on flowers. Our florist was amazing at working within a fairly tight budget, giving her a dollar range and very general color theme instead of demanding specific flowers paid incredible dividends. She was able to build amazing displays that weren't very expensive at all and tied in beautifully to the venue. The only thing my wife really had her heart set on was mango calla lilies for her bridal bouquet, but we gave orange roses to the bridesmaids and everything looked brilliant. Getting the drink upgrade package. Venue specific, but the difference between full open bar versus 3 bottles of wine on each table and cash bar was like $3 per guest. Kind of a no-brainer. Venue. To each their own, but if you're near any kind of wine country, it's shocking how reasonable prices are for events. Competition in a free market occasionally does work for consumers. Rustic stacked stone barrel house with outdoor string lighting, full catering, and the ambience of a vineyard in late September, all for about $10,000 all inclusive. Beat the hell out of the local golf courses, Elks Lodge, and other venues we looked at in terms of both absolute price and what we got for our money. A great DJ. Seriously, whoever DJs is going to be more than half of the time your guests remember. Get some personality and someone you can count on to lead the event. I had a slight advantage there since I used to work as an event DJ and hired the guy I used to work for. I regret not turning around to watch my wife walk down the aisle. It was an outdoor wedding with no music, and I was told to stare at the nearby ruins so I didn't accidentally see my wife as she made her way to the back of where we had the ceremony. With no cue, I had no idea when to turn until she tapped me on the shoulder and giggled a small, hi. Her dress was amazing, and the ceremony went well amidst a surprise downpour, 2 hours earlier than expected, but I really wish I had been able to watch her walk the aisle. I didn't get to eat the hors d'oeuvres. I was so excited about them, especially the tiny beef Wellingtons. Was so busy taking pictures and then getting to the main course I forgot to get any. I also forgot to get drunk. I had maybe 1 or 2 drinks. It was such a busy day. I kinda wish I could have gone as a guest. Making sure I said hi to everyone. I remember a table with my husband's aunt and cousin who I had never met, and as I walked past I realized later they were getting ready for me to come over and say hi. I had just got done walking away from my stepmom who was causing all kinds of drama, and it didn't dawn on me until later that I didn't make sure I said hi to them. It was a very small wedding and I said hi to a lot of them, but I know I missed a few and regret it. Oh, and ignoring all drama. I had an amazing night, but I should have ignored my stepmom and I should have made my maid of honor take a cab instead of being her DD on my wedding night. Allowing other people to decide who was invited. I was trying to be fair to everyone, but the list of people my husband was told he had to invite was enormous. We had a rather small venue, only able to accommodate 80 people, and that list took up more than half of that. I had to make cuts, which of course made me bridezilla, but like, I'm sorry, your neighbor that I think is creepy and intrusive can't come. I regret not making a bigger stand though, because I look back at my pictures and there's so many people I still don't even know who they are, several that I did but didn't want there in the first place, and so many missing that I wish I could have invited but didn't have a spot for. I can blame Reddit for this one. Instead of individual party favors, we made a donation to a local animal rescue organization, and they then brought a puppy party, 2 puppies, already adopted, to the reception. I mentioned this on a wedding sub and people mobbed me about it. So I took all sorts of extra precautions about where they would be, told the photographer not to take any photos to discourage them being treated as props, etc. Mostly they were good steps, but I went overboard and I wish more people could have enjoyed their adorableness and raised awareness of the org. TBH, I regret my dress. It wasn't my favorite and I only got it cause it was priced for $150. I didn't have much money, so I cut costs where I thought would be fit and thought the dress should be cheap considering how I'd only wear it for 1 day. If I could do my wedding over again, I'd splurge to feel like a princess. On my final fitting day I sobbed because I hated it so much. But at that point, there was nothing I could do. Not planning ahead. We married some months ago, just us. Had to go to Denmark as it is easier, but we didn't really plan anything in advance. We went in car from Germany and we were crashing in hotels in the towns along the way. The wedding day morning was nice and unique, but we were running late to the town hall and the stress made us have a small fight 5 minutes before. After that we made the mistake of just driving south as we were sure we would find a nice restaurant to eat. We didn't. Everything was closed by 1600. We didn't think on driving 1 hour north to Copenhagen, where I guess there would be something open, so we ended up in a crappy kebab place. There was nothing to do around, so we just returned to Germany, but by the time we are there, receptions in hotels are closed. We thought we would be sleeping in the car, still with wedding dress by the way, but after some hours we find a very nice hotel and sleep like babies. I regret that all those things made us irritable, especially me, as hunger makes me so irritable and angry instead of taking it with humor. We try to see our self-made wedding photos and remember the nice moments we had, but still regret we didn't plan better or at least drove to a big city instead of going to the middle of nowhere. Anyway, married life has been great and we may have later, when COVID allows it, a wedding party, so no big deal. I regret taking it so seriously. It's just 1 day as long as you make it nice, don't get too stressed about it. But, I sat a friend with a table of strangers because we didn't have enough room and it was a tight fit. The strangers were all his age and lived in NYC like him, but I should have sat him with his friends. Also, I regret not having a longer ceremony. I think ours was about 5 minutes. It should have had a reading by someone or some other elements to it. And I wish the food was a little better. We liked the venue so much so that trumped the meh food quality. Taking a higher dose of my new anti-anxiety medication. I'd been on a new regimen for a month and had responded well, so my doctor raised the dose for the week of the wedding, assuming that I would have even more anxiety than usual and would need it to cope. Instead, it super amplified my anxiety, and I had quite a few attacks in the lead up to the wedding, culminating in me being completely absent for about an hour during the wedding reception as I tried to get a grip on myself. Eventually, I got back to a functioning baseline and got through the rest of the day, but yikes. Turns out that the medication can sometimes exacerbate anxiety instead of relieving it, and I had managed to hit upon a dosage that really wrecked me. A follow-up appointment with my doctor a couple weeks later put me back on a lower dose. Never, ever, ever radically adjust psychotropic medication before your wedding. Having one. I really didn't like the formality of it all. We were traveling when I proposed, and I wanted to get married in a small old church in France, but she wanted to have her family and everyone there. So, we had a big wedding a couple years after we got home. I just didn't want such a big event where half the people there we didn't really know, and then to have to spend time saying hello to them. In the end, I just wanted to marry her, so it really wasn't that big of deal to me. It made her happy, so it made me happy. This was in 1997, so things were much different. It is way easier these days to have the wedding you want, no matter how small or different it may seem. Allowing my caterer to talk us into using the ham they bought versus one we could have hand-picked. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't as nice of a ham as we had wanted for our wedding day. That's about it. It was a big but cheap wedding. Our guest list was somewhere in the 85 to 100 range. We pulled a lot of personal favors and really went with quality of company and entertainment over trifles like decorations. We had a musician friend DJ and we paid him to learn a song just for our wedding. My spouse's brother was the officiant. Our mutual boss donated the non-food as his gift to us. We worked for a caterer during some seasonal events, so they did the catering for free and we paid for the food they used. Their uncle who lived near us gave us the use of his nice flat field in our scenic little town. He also had an abundance of tents because of the events he ran personally on his field. We just rented tables, chairs, and a dance floor. We made the table decorations ourselves. I designed the invitations. Their sister is a hobbyist baker, so her gift to us was our cake and the cupcakes for guests. One of our close friends is a photographer and gave us a good rate. My spouse went with a cheaper but still nice dress. I went with some stuff I could wear again someday. We only bought engagement rings for one another and splurged a little, so no wedding bands. Our wedding cost about $4,000 including our rings, paperwork, clothing. My wife wanted a specific piece to walk down the aisle to. Due to a whole range of issues including the elderly organist never having seen it before and not having an organ score for it, so she would have had to adapt and learn it in a very short time, we compromised and had a more traditional piece played. I never should have agreed to the compromise and should have found a way to make it work even if we couldn't use the organ, as it is the one little moment of our wedding that doesn't make my wife smile when it is mentioned. When we reach our 15 or 20 years together, past 10 already, I will be hosting a formal party where we can walk in together to it to make it up to her in some small part. I regret making my former best friend my bridesmaid. We were growing in different directions. I knew she hated weddings, but my dumb ass thought I could bring her closer. It was a disaster and I felt terrible when she predictably did not give a shit about anything. I felt overlooked and unimportant. I should have just let the friendship run its course instead of dragging us through this final death rattle of a relationship I was grieving in real time. I felt humiliated because the person I loved so much did not give a fuck. Learn from my mistake. I regret not getting my bangs put back by the hairdresser. They kept falling in my face and it kind of wrecked several important photos. Also, I should have paid to have my makeup done. I don't really know how to do my own makeup and my friends hadn't ever done my makeup before. I probably spent too much money, time on our favor bag, but I had fun assembling the various parts, so not a major regret. I regret not making my own plate of food, because whoever assembled my plate didn't get the food that I had been really looking forward to: rip bacon wrapped pineapple, macaroni and cheese, amazing Brussels sprout dish. I forgot to tell my vegetarian friends there were more options for them, they just needed to ask. They were actually really surprised there were already so many things they could have and didn't feel like they missed anything. I felt vaguely guilty, even though they were happy as it was. Other than that, well, the only not great things were out of my control.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video. And if you are new, subscribe and click on the bell icon.